Cherchez la Femme
by O. Henry Robbins, reporter for the Picayune and Dumars of Labille, the old French newspaper that has buzzed for nearly a century, were good friends, well proven by years of ups and downs together. They were seated where they had a habit of meeting, in the little, Creole, haunted café of Madame Tibault in Domain Street. If you know the place, you will experience a thrill of pleasure in recalling it to mind. It is small and dark, with 6 little polished tables, at which you may sit and drink the best coffee in New Orleans, and concoctions of absinthe equal to Sazerac's best. Madame Tibault, fat and indulgent, presides at the desk and takes your money. Nicolette and Mime, Madame's nieces, in charming bib aprons, bring the desirable beverages. Dumars, with true Creole luxury, was sipping his absinthe, with half-closed eyes, in a whirl of cigarette smoke. Robbins was looking over the morning/pic, detecting, as young reporters will, the gross blunders in the makeup and the envious blue penciling his own stuff had received. This item, in the advertising columns, caught his eye, and with an exclamation of sudden interest he read it aloud to his friend. Public auction. At 3 o'clock this afternoon there will be sold to the highest bidder all the common property of the Little Sisters of Samaria, at the home of the Sisterhood, in Bonham Street. The sale will dispose of the building, ground, and the complete furnishings of the house and chapel, without reserve. This notice stirred the two friends to a reminiscent talk concerning an episode in their journalistic career that had occurred about 2 years before. They recalled the incidents, went over the old theories, and discussed it anew from the different perspective time had brought. There were no other customers in the cafe. Madame's fine ear had caught the line of their talk, and she came over to their table, for had it not been her lost money, her vanished $20,000, that had set the whole matter going? The three took up the long-abandoned mystery, threshing over the old, dry chaff of it. It was in the chapel of this house of the Little Sisters of Samaria that Robbins and Dumars had stood during that eager, fruitless news search of theirs, and looked upon the gilded statue of the Virgin. "That's so, boys," said Madame, summing up.
"Tosh fair wicked mon, M'sieur Morin."
"Everybody shall be cert. He steal those money I plays in his hand for keep safe. Yes, he's bound spend that money, somehow." Madame turned a broad and contemplative smile upon Dumars. "I understand you, M'sieur Dumars. Those day you come ask if tell everything I know about M'sieur Morin." "Ah, yes, I know most time when those men lose money you say, /Cherchez la Femme, / there is somewhere the woman, but not from M'sieur Morin. No, boys, before he shall die, he is like one saint. You mights well, M'sieur Dumars, go try find those money in the statue of Virgin Mary that M'sieur Morin present at those /petite sœurs / as try find one /femme /." At Madame Tibault's last words, Robbins started slightly and cast a keen, sidelong glance at Dumars. The Creole sat, unmoved, dreamily watching the spirals of his cigarette smoke. It was then 9 o'clock in the morning and, a few minutes later, the two friends separated, going different ways to their day's duties. And now follows the brief story of Madame Tibault's vanished thousands. New Orleans will readily recall to mind the circumstances attendant upon the death of Mr. Gaspard Morin in that city. Mr. Morin was an artistic goldsmith and jeweler in the old French Quarter, and a man held in the highest esteem. He belonged to one of the oldest French families, and was of some distinction as an antiquary and historian. He was a bachelor, about 50 years of age. He lived in quiet comfort, at one of those rare old hostelries in Royal Street. He was found in his rooms, one morning, dead from unknown causes. When his affairs came to be looked into, it was found that he was practically insolvent, his stock of goods and personal property barely, but nearly enough to free him from censure covering his liabilities. Following came the disclosure that he had been entrusted with the sum of $20,000 by a former upper servant in the Morin family, one Madame Tibault, which he had received as a legacy from relatives in France. The most searching scrutiny by friends and the legal authorities failed to reveal the disposition of the money. It had vanished and left no trace. Some weeks before his death, Mr. Morin had drawn the entire amount in gold coin from the bank where it had been placed while he looked about, he told Madame Tibault, for a safe investment. Therefore, Mr. Morin's memory seemed doomed to bear the cloud of dishonesty, while Madame was, of course, disconsolate. Then it was that Robbins and Dumars, representing their respective journals, began one of those pertinacious private investigations which, of late years, the press has adopted as a means to glory and the satisfaction of public curiosity.
Cherchez la femme, 7 Dumars.
That's the ticket, agreed Robbins. All roads lead to the eternal feminine. We will find the woman. They exhausted the knowledge of the staff of Mr. Morin's hotel, from the bellboy down to the proprietor. They gently, but inflexibly, pumped the family of the deceased as far as his cousins twice removed. They artfully sounded the employees of the late jeweler and dogged his customers for information concerning his habits. Like bloodhounds, they traced every step of the supposed defaulter, as nearly as might be, for years along the limited and monotonous paths he had trodden. At the end of their labors, Mr. Morin stood, an immaculate man. Not one weakness that might be served up as a criminal tendency, not one deviation from the path of rectitude, not even a hint of a predilection for the opposite sex, was found to be placed in his debit. His life had been as regular and austere as a monk's, his habits simple and unconcealed. Generous, charitable, and a model in propriety, was the verdict of all who knew him. "What now?" asked Robbins, fingering his empty notebook.
Cherchez la femme, 7 Dumars, lighting a cigarette.
Try Lady Bellairs. This piece of femininity was the racetrack favorite of the season. Being feminine, she was erratic in her gaits, and there were a few heavy losers about town who had believed she could be true. The reporters applied for information. Mr. Morin? Certainly not. He was never even a spectator at the races. Not that kind of a man. Surprised the gentleman should ask. "Shall we throw it up?" suggested Robbins, "and let the puzzle department have a try?"
Cherchez la femme, 8 Dumars, reaching for a match.
Try the Little Sisters of What Do You Call Him? It had developed, during the investigation, that Mr. Morin had held this benevolent order in particular favor. He had contributed liberally toward its support and had chosen its chapel as his favorite place of private worship. It was said that he went there daily to make his devotions at the altar. Indeed, toward the last of his life, his whole mind seemed to have fixed itself upon religious matters, perhaps to the detriment of his worldly affairs. Thither went Robbins and Dumars, and were admitted through the narrow doorway in the blank stone wall that frowned upon Bonham Street. An old woman was sweeping the chapel. She told them that Sister Felicite, the head of the order, was then at prayer at the altar in the alcove. In a few moments she would emerge. Heavy, black curtains screened the alcove. They waited. Soon the curtains were disturbed, and Sister Felicite came forth. She was tall, tragic, bony, and plain-featured, dressed in the black gown and severe bonnet of the Sisterhood. Robbins, a good rough-and-tumble reporter, but lacking the delicate touch, began to speak. They represented the press. The lady had, no doubt, heard of the Morin affair. It was necessary, in justice to that gentleman's memory, to probe the mystery of the lost money. It was known that he had come often to this chapel. Any information, now, concerning Mr. Morin's habits, tastes, the friends he had, and so on, would be of value in doing him posthumous justice. Sister Felicite had heard. Whatever she knew would be willingly told, but it was very little. M'sieur Morin had been a good friend to the order, sometimes contributing as much as $100. The Sisterhood was an independent one, depending entirely upon private contributions for the means to carry on its charitable work. Mr. Morin had presented the chapel with silver candlesticks and an altar cloth. He came every day to worship in the chapel, sometimes remaining for an hour. He was a devout Catholic, consecrated to holiness. Yes, and also in the alcove was a statue of the Virgin that he had himself modeled, cast, and presented to the order. Oh, it was cruel to cast a doubt upon so good a man. Robbins was also profoundly grieved at the imputation. But, until it was found what Mr. Morin had done with Madame Tibault's money, he feared the tongue of slander would not be stilled. Sometimes, in fact, very often in affairs of the kind there was, as the saying goes, a lady in the case. In absolute confidence, now if perhaps. Sister Felicite's large eyes regarded him solemnly. There was one woman, she said, slowly, to whom he bowed, to whom he gave his heart. Robbins fumbled rapturously for his pencil. Behold the woman, said Sister Felicite, suddenly, in deep tones. She reached a long arm and swept aside the curtain of the alcove. And there was a shrine, lit to a glow of soft color by the light pouring through a stained glass window. Within a deep niche in the bare stone wall stood an image of the Virgin Mary, the color of pure gold. Dumars, a conventional Catholic, succumbed to the dramatic in the act. He bowed his head for an instant and made the sign of the cross. The somewhat abashed Robbins, murmuring an indistinct apology, backed awkwardly away. Sister Felicite drew back the curtain, and the reporters departed. On the narrow sidewalk of Bonham Street, Robbins turned to Dumars with unworthy sarcasm. Well, what next? Cherchez la Femme? Absinthe, said Dumars. With the history of the missing money thus partially related, some conjecture may be formed of the sudden idea that Madame Tibault's words seemed to have suggested to Robbins's brain. Was it so wild a surmise that the religious fanatic had offered up his wealth, or, rather, Madame Tibault's in the shape of a material symbol of his consuming devotion? Stranger things have been done in the name of worship. Was it not possible that the lost thousands were molded into that lustrous image? That the goldsmith had formed it of the pure and precious metal and set it there, through some hope of a perhaps disordered brain to propitiate the saints and pave the way to his own selfish glory? That afternoon, at 3:05, Robbins entered the chapel door of the Little Sisters of Samaria. He saw, in the dim light, a crowd of perhaps 100 people gathered to attend the sale. Most of them were members of various religious orders, priests and churchmen, come to purchase the paraphernalia of the chapel, lest they fall into desecrating hands. Others were businessmen and agents come to bid upon the realty. A clerical-looking brother had volunteered to wield the hammer, bringing to the office of auctioneer the anomaly of choice diction and dignity of manner. A few of the minor articles were sold, and then 2 assistants brought forward the image of the Virgin. Robbins started the bidding at $10. A stout man, in an ecclesiastical garb, went to $15. A voice from another part of the crowd raised to $20. The 3 bid alternately, raising by bids of $5, until the offer was $50. Then the stout man dropped out, and Robbins, as a sort of coup de main went to $100. $150, said the other voice. $200, bid Robbins, boldly. $250, called his competitor, promptly. The reporter hesitated for the space of a lightning flash, estimating how much he could borrow from the boys in the office and screw from the business manager from his next month's salary. $300, he offered. $350, spoke up the other, in a louder voice that sent Robbins diving suddenly through the crowd in its direction, to catch Dumars, its owner, ferociously by the collar. You unconverted idiot, hissed Robbins, close to his ear. Pool. Agreed, said Dumars coolly. I couldn't raise $350 with a search warrant, but I can stand half. What you come bidding against me for? I thought I was the only fool in the crowd, explained Robbins. No one else bidding. The statue was knocked down to the syndicate at their last offer. Dumars remained with the prize, while Robbins hurried forth to wring from the resources and credit of both the price. He soon returned with the money, and the 2 musketeers loaded their precious package into a carriage and drove with it to Dumars's room in Old Chartres Street, nearby. They lugged it, covered with a cloth, up the stairs, and deposited it on a table. 100 pounds it weighed, if an ounce, and at that estimate, according to their calculation, if their daring theory were correct, it stood there, worth 20,000 golden dollars. Robbins removed the covering and opened his pocket knife. Saker slash, muttered Dumars, shuddering. It is the mother of Christ. What would you do? Shut up, Judas, said Robbins coldly. It's too late for you to be saved now. With a firm hand, he chipped a slice from the shoulder of the image. The cut showed a dull, grayish metal with a thin coating of gold leaf. Lead, announced Robbins, hurling his knife to the floor, gilded. To the devil with it, said Dumars, forgetting his scruples. I must have a drink. Together they walked moodily to the café of Madame Tibault, 2 squares away. It seemed that Madame's mind had been stirred that day to fresh recollections of the past services of the 2 young men in her behalf. "You mustn't sit by those table," she interposed, as they were about to drop into their accustomed seats. "That's so, boys. But no, I make you come at this room, like my slash trace bon Amos slash. Yes, I go and mek for you myself 1 slash anisette slash and 1 slash cafe royale slash for fine. I lack treat my friend Nyes. Yes, please come in this way." Madame led them into the little back room, into which she sometimes invited the especially favored of her customers. In 2 comfortable armchairs, by a big window that opened upon the courtyard, she placed them, with a low table between. Bustling hospitably about, she began to prepare the promised refreshments. It was the first time the reporters had been honored with admission to the sacred precincts. The room was in dusky twilight, flecked with gleams of the polished, fine woods and burnished glass and metal that the Creoles love. From the little courtyard, a tiny fountain sent in an insinuating sound of trickling waters, to which a banana plant by the window kept time with its tremulous leaves. Robbins, an investigator by nature, sent a curious glance roving about the room. From some barbaric ancestor, Madame had inherited a slash penchant slash for the crude in decoration. The walls were adorned with cheap lithographs, florid libels upon nature, addressed to the taste of the slash bourgeoisie slash, birthday cards, garish newspaper supplements, and specimens of art advertising calculated to reduce the optic nerve to stunned submission. A patch of something unintelligible in the midst of the more candid display puzzled Robbins, and he rose and took a step nearer to interrogate it at closer range. Then he leaned weakly against the wall and called out, "Madame Tibault, oh, madame, since when have you been in the habit of papering your walls with $5,000 United States 4% gold bonds? Tell me, is this a Grimm's fairy tale, or should I consult an oculist?" At his words, Madame Tibault and Dumars approached. "What you say?" said Madame, cheerily. "What you say, M'sieur Robin, slash bon slash.
Tose nis liel pis papier.
One tam I think those W you call calendar, was ze lil day of Mont below. But, no, those wall is broken those plays, M'sieur Robin, and I plays those lil pieces papier to conceal ze crack. I did think the couleur harmonize so well with the wall papier. Where I get them from? Yes, I remember well. One day M'sieur Morin, he come at my house, that's 'bout 1 month before he shall die, that's long 'bout tam he promise fo envies those money fo me. M'sieur Morin, he leave those lil pieces papier in those table, and say ver much 'bout money that's hard for me to onstand. Slash maze slash I never see those money again.
Tosh faire wicked mon, M'sieur Morin.
What you call those pieces papier, M'sieur Robbie, slash bon slash. Robbins explained. There's your $20,000 with coupons attached, he said, running his thumb around the edge of the 4 bonds. Better get an expert to peel them off for you. Mr. Morin was right. I'm going out to get my ears trimmed. He dragged Dumars by the arm into the outer room. Madame was screaming for Nicolette and Mime to come and observe the fortune returned to her by M'sieur Morin, that best of men, that saint in glory. "Mossy," said Robbins, "I'm going on a jamboree. For 3 days the esteemed slash pick. Slash will have to get along without my valuable services. I advise you to join me. Now, that green stuff you drink is no good. It stimulates thought. What we want to do is to forget to remember. I'll introduce you to the only lady in this case that is guaranteed to produce the desired results. Her name is Belle of Kentucky, 12-year-old bourbon. In quarts. How does the idea strike you?" "Slash Allons slash," said Dumars.
Cherchez la femme point.